Hi, welcome to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Thanks for joining the conversation. Hello, Dan. Nice to see you.
Hello, it's been a while. It's been a
It's been
while.
a
Yeah.
little while. I mean,
Yeah.
the last time we spoke was the fall. I'm in Florida, so really it's like one season all year round, which is hot, gross. I mean, we have like a week. It was cold in December apparently, but it has been a while. It has been a while, and it is really good to see you.
And back at you. It's good to see you too. I was trying to head down your way in the fall, but you guys kept having hurricanes.
I
So,
know. I know. I was very disappointed because it wasn't just you, but also one of our good friends like from Switzerland was supposed to come that same week, and yeah, and then nobody came to visit because Florida rejected everyone with its hurricane. So
well, and I'll
that
be
was a
honest with
bummer.
you, after what your governor's been doing with Disneyland, I might not come down anymore anyway. I don't,
Don't hold
I'm
our
not going
governor
to,
against us.
well, I know that's, there's some things that he does that are just, you know, uh, he's trying to pick a fight and everything you do, that's enough. We won't. It's. I have opinions, and I don't. I don't.
No, I actually love your opinions. If you want to share, you don't have to, but I will
Well, I'm never.
say, go on.
No, you go on. You will
I
say.
know. I was just going to say, I will say that um, those of us here in Florida, as Floridians, are also very frustrated. So uh, he does not
Well,
represent all of us, let's say.
when you allow people to pick on the disenfranchised and the people are hurting, I just, you know, I believe in the absolute dignity of every human person, and I don't know why that's so hard for people to. But that's what. Well, we'll move on. Let's talk. Let's get going.
I actually wanted to hear about your detour though, because I was so excited you were going to come do beach things, right? Like you were going to do Florida, the
Got the
nice
whole true
parts of
story.
Florida, but then you went north.
Do you want the whole true story?
Yeah, sure.
You sure?
I'm always good with the truth. I can
So
handle it, I think.
the first night, we made the stop in Aurora, Colorado, and I sat down on the hotel bar because some places when you travel, there's just not a lot of options, and hotel bars are usually pretty good. And the guy sat down next to me, and he ordered a Guinness, and I thought, well, anytime someone orders a Guinness, that's always a good sign, uh, because it means you're not in Utah anymore. That's what it means. And the Louisville Memphis game, I think, was on. I could be wrong about one of the teams. And we're talking for a few minutes, and he just kind of turns to me and goes, "You've been to the dark night of the soul." Now, the reason that's fascinating, that comes from St. John of the Cross. And that's always been the way. That's how I've been describing the last 4 years of my life. Since my brother Phil died unexpectedly, uh, of course, my brother Phil died. My daughter got married the next weekend. I found out some terrible things. Um, I divorced Tiffany. Lindsay had a very traumatic pregnancy. Leo was born, shouldn't have made it. He's doing fine. He's massive. He's fine. Tiffany died. Her mom died. And so the phrase I use is, "I'm going through the dark night of the soul." And he said that out of nowhere. And I went, okay, this is weird. And so he starts telling me, he goes, "I apologize." Sure, okay, there's nothing to apologize for. It's kind of interesting. He goes, "I'm a psychic." And of course, my eyes rolled. It's like, oh yeah, you're a psychic. And then he said something, two things that kind of changed the next couple of months. He says, "Okay, this guy." Okay, first he goes, I just can't get a reading from you." He goes, "It's like you're trying to constantly lift the world or something about putting things over your head." I go, and of course, well, I'm a strength coach and a weightlifting. And he goes, "Oh," he goes, "that's it right there." Okay. And then he said two things. The first was, "I have the feeling that your father's over on your left shoulder." Folks, I think it's all hooey when I'm telling you, except it all happened. It's all true. So your dad's on your left shoulder. My dad died a long, long time ago. And I just pieced together another bit of information. At my dad's funeral, we didn't know it yet, but we were pregnant with Lindsay.
Mm.
And I can't tell you all the news yet, but let's just say history repeated itself. Okay, we'll just stop there. Uh, Um, and I said, okay, that's just weird. And there was like, he goes, there's something your dad wants you to do. I go, okay, I'm 65. My dad died 30, 40 years ago. Okay, whatever. Yeah. And then he said the last thing. He goes, you always try to do the right thing, which is kind of a thing I do. And he goes, just keep doing the right thing. So, okay. So as we're going across the country, next day we stop in Kansas. We go to the Emporia State, Pittsburgh State football game. That's because my niece goes there. So all my nieces and my nephews from that side of the family were all at the Emporia State game. We had a tremendous time. We go up to Granville, Ohio, because my mentor, John Powell, died in August, and he left me literally everything of value about discus
Oh,
throwing that he owned. And so we had a little ceremony at the old place we used to all throw in Ohio. And then every day the reports from Florida are getting worse and worse. So I just say to Eric, I say, well, let's go north and drop by. And the one person who couldn't make the memorial was Lonnie Wade, who coaches up at North Country Union High School. He was the last person to talk to my dad before my dad died. My dad was living in Vermont. So we go up there, beautiful reunion. And then in the stands is my grandniece, my grandnephew, and their best friend. Their best friend's family owns a hotel in Island Pond, Vermont. In Island Pond, Vermont, there's a street called Pleasant Street. It's a street my dad died on. It's a street my grandmother died on. And it's where all my dad's family's buried. And there's at the end of the street, Pleasant Street turns into Arthur John Road. My name is Daniel Arthur John. I'm named after Arthur John. And then while I was there, I was able to kind of mend some fences with old friends and family. And after 2 months there, I realized that my dad was sending me to prepare myself, I think, to mend fences as appropriate and to prepare myself for this next wave of badness in my heart. And so my father, so the joke I had before I even put this all together is all I did, I just made a left turn and went to Vermont versus a right turn to go to Florida. My father was on my left shoulder guiding me there.
oh.
And that's everything I just told true. And folks, I don't believe in that, but it all happened. So there you go. Yeah.
I mean, sometimes it happens the way it happens. And honestly, you were better off definitely not coming to Florida. So that was definitely a thing. The hurricanes
Cheers.
were annoying, very annoying. Yes. Cheers. Well, um, wow, that's quite a lot. It's been a lot for you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
um I am failing right now at recalling the book I read, which kind of always it talks about like grief and grieving. And I know that you're um, quite an expert on this, and also in like I think
Sad.
mentoring is the wrong word, but also you would counsel people and also kind of comfort people in different environments for that. And it's interesting because I learned that one of the worst things or um a burdening thing is to tell someone like, "Oh, let me know what I can do to help," right? And instead of putting something on them, rather just saying like, "Well, you're just an amazing person, and clearly all the people around you that are now gone have made quite an impact on you and have a lot to do with who you are, and you're an amazing person." That I know. I maybe didn't know them, but I know you, and so, but I know that a lot of people always say, "Hey, let me know what I can do." And then it puts like actually a burden on the person who's grieving, right? To think of something that to kind of respond to. So I've learned this isn't just like me being amazing through like lessons and reading, like, wow, that's really insightful because that's the last thing people need to hear. It's like, let me give you an assignment now. So, but I will
Yeah.
say that I
Oh,
am
sure.
definitely sorry for all your loss. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's been a time. Well, let's talk about whatever we want to talk about today.
Sure, sure. Well, we, as in you and I, this is by the way, episode 12. So we're like at a dozen now, which is fun. And we have, of course, been exploring the lovely Sword in the Stone and in our own time, in our own way. And last time we did kind of the hero's journey, and which is kind of like leading up to the big journey that you just went on. But of course, now we are in the adventure of Robin Wood, which for those listeners who are thinking I said the wrong name, yes, I meant to say Robin Wood.
Well, it's funny because the boys get corrected for saying it wrong because everyone in the forest says Robin Hood,
Yeah, Robin
but
Hood.
it's not Robin Hood, it's Robin Wood. And it's a very funny thing. Once already, T.H. White is kind of having fun with the whole thing. And, the correct way is wood, but the people who live in the woods drop the W. So it's a delightful little story. Where are we picking up exactly on? And I'll grab oh, by the way, my sister was here this last few days,
My
and
book.
this is the version of the book that she gave to me.
Yes,
Um,
yes. I
and
have the same one.
and if you look over there on that wall right there, that painting there, that black and white,
Yeah.
is the author Dennis Nolan drew
Hmm.
that, and
Oh,
he also
fantastic.
added "For Me, Never Let Go" on it. So that's kind of cool. And the reason
Yeah.
I bring that up this time is because it is the picture in the book of their homecoming. So, real quick. So in this book, loot players. The only one little problem with this particular chapter is it's 4 chapters, right?
Hmm. Um, sorry,
It's a
repeat that. This chapter.
this this particular adventure is maybe
Oh, it's 4 chapters. Oh, that would be a you question.
I believe it's
I don't have it as memorized, but I do know that you and I typically get through about half a chapter in a conversation, so I wouldn't really worry about jumping ahead. But
oh there
I do have matching book behind me as well as on the
that
iPads.
so that picture there,
Yeah,
the
that's
original
the drawing.
that's the
Oh,
original, and then he later changed it a little bit. He,
lovely.
let's see, he flipped it and he dropped out no, he just basically flipped it, I guess, and cleaned it up a little bit. That's it. So I'm ready when you are.
All
So
right. So I was going to just straight up pick up from 10 and, where I actually love how the boys basically are saying it wrong. And then Robin Wood, and then how they said, where's the part? I thought all Robin Wood's men wore hose and jerkins of Lincoln green. That is due, replied Little John, in the winter like when us needs. Or with leather leggings that would work, but here by summer, 'tis more seasonable thus for the pickets who have not to do save watch. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So, but what I kind of gathered for the fun part of that is the stereotyping of things, but also the practicality where Little John's like, well, obviously we only wear the leggings when it's cold or when we need them. And so I just thought that was fun. And also it puts us right into the dialect, right, which is as a reader you're kind of immediately in a new place just from seeing it on the
yeah.
page and then hearing it, right, and then saying it out loud was kind of horrendous just now, but
If you remember now, in chapter 9, not much happens in chapter 9. Basically, Merlin gets frustrated because Wart wants Kay to have something to do. So the key to this next few chapters, this is Kay as the feature.
Mhm.
He's the person, and this is his adventure.
Right.
Which is interesting because it's also the longest of the entire book.
Hmm.
Now, another thing that's going to happen in this chapter, and you're not, if you have the right edition, and I'm saying the one you have is right. So there's going to be a lot of arrows that are like wasp arrows. They're going to have black, yellow, and black on the tips. We encountered this arrow a while ago when young Arthur Wart first found Merlin. Remember, he had to hide because someone was shooting at him. In this version, the 1938 version, the correct version, I think, we're going to meet the people who shot those arrows.
Mm. Mhm.
And you're going to need an encyclopedia to follow all the characters.
I feel that way often in this book, and it's delightful though. I used to get frustrated probably as a younger reader and I was too impatient to look things up, but now that I'm on my, I don't know, however many reads I'm on, thanks to you, that I actually enjoy going back and then realizing what a bad memory I have because I'm like, I looked that up last time and I still have to look it up again. I'm a
Well,
terrible
there's
student.
the people they fight, the anthropomagi or something like that. They are an ancient thing that shows up in when people first traveled the world. There'd be these little signs on the map, there be dragons or something like that. or they were humans who had no heads, but their eyes were on their chest.
Mm.
Uh, Pan's Labyrinth, basically, if you've ever seen the movie, Pan's Labyrinth basically is what you're looking for. All those, the one creature with the eyes in his hands, kind of thing. So yeah, so let's get started. Let's make your comments. I'll make mine.
Yeah,
You're up first.
yeah. I'm up first. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, um, the highlights that I have really that started kind of there with just loving how we jump right into the woods.
Mhm.
And obviously, um, I love that we're meeting Maid Marian because there's so much that's told through her character and interaction with Ward and just it's also nice to see like the female presence coming into into the chapter into the book rather finally. So I love that
It's not
that we get
just
to
that
meet
she's a
her.
female.
Yes.
That's Wart's first pitter pattering of his heart.
Yes.
And he says, this is the kind of woman I want to marry.
Yeah.
She's probably the best huntress of the group.
Mhm.
She's also very pretty, but she's also a great teacher, by the way, in the
Yeah.
motif being teach. So I've always told friends of mine who want to be teachers, read The Sword and the Stone, because it's just it's a study on teaching.
Yeah.
And in fact, in this chapter, I always use the rote when I would teach rote memory. Okay, we're sliding to chapter 11, but there's a moment in chapter 11 where Robin gives out directions, and then there's a strange buzzing that goes around after Robin gives the directions. And I can't remember if Kay says to Wart or Wart says to Kay, shush, because his captains were repeating verbatim what Robin had just said. So in a time before literacy, the way you kept things in your head was rote memory. Uh, it's interesting because in education, as we sit and teach, there are still people like me who believe that there is a great value in rote memory. But you can sit back and tell me, well, I don't need to know that's the femur, the thigh bone. I can just look it up on my phone. And that's true, except an educated person kind of should just know that's the femur and move on. Um, you know, we used to have this one question that used to get asked every year at the at Judge Memorial for student body president. A student would always ask, "What is the capital of Vermont?" That was a standard question. Now, if you know who my background, you might know who came up with that question. Uh, but the answer is Montpelier. Now, here's the thing: we had a new director of whatever, student of government or whatever the hell it was, who said, I don't want stupid questions like, what's the capital of Vermont? And I argued with the person. I said, there's two things. First, do you really want someone running the student body who doesn't know the 50 capitals? And the person said, well, that's just not very important. And I leaned in and I thought, wow, we're from different. I was about to drop the F bomb. We're from
That's
different.
okay, you can.
And then I realized something else, that the students who are running for student body president should know that that is the question asked every single year. And if they won't do that tiny bit of preparation, they're not going to do anything. They're just going to be the typical crappy high school student body president who is really popular in his early part of the year, and he's hated by everyone towards the end of the year because they don't do a damn thing.
Mm.
If you don't know the capital of Vermont, then especially so gentle listeners, next week you need to know the capital of Vermont. I'm giving a whole week. If you can't do it by then, I don't want you driving my car. There you go. Yeah.
Well, I think that's really fascinating though, because we always talk about The Sword in the Stone being a book on education and a
Always.
book being on people who want to be educated as well as educators, right? So it's just so much a book on education. And of course, growing up, I never saw that. You just see this like, oh, it's a story about the kid who could pull the sword out and he was the gifted one or whatever. And it's kind of like, oh, there's that thought of the chosen or gifted one versus the one who's on a path of learning or has like an openness to learning. And I
The
think that's
chosen one is Kay. The chosen one in the story is whatever you want, is
step
whatever
brother
step
kind
brother like
of.
this. Yeah. Another great little line in the book is when Kay and Wart ask, I think it's John, how did you know we were coming? And he said, us knowed. Us knowed. Now, I don't think that's correct English, but even though, that would be an interesting thing. How do you know what you know? Well, probably somebody told him. And in his world, if you get told something, you know it.
Mhm.
If and again, I think that ties back. I don't know if T.H. White was doing that on purpose. We'll never know, of course, but I always thought that was a brilliant little thing. So us knowed, and then a few paragraphs, maybe in a whole chapter later, the rote memory, and that's how you know. You know because you put it in. There's a great the word for memory in Spanish is recorder, and it means to put into your heart again. And I just think that's a fascinating way to look at one of the sub themes of this chapter. The other thing about this chapter is instantly so the boys are shooting arrows, okay, and there's no lute players. I guess they don't make a lot of noise when they let go of the string. They're well trained. But the second that happens, of course, John and Robin have to have a shooting contest. And so almost immediately in the story, and that's pretty much where the story goes, isn't it? Is that? Yeah.
Yeah. So then
Yeah.
they do the, and then we start bringing up, well, then they go on the adventure together, right? On the thought of the arrows, one of the things that I had highlighted, and or actually just because you said something so profound just now, I don't want to just run right past it, but like kind of that I find it fascinating because I find myself straddling the, oh, I can just ask Siri or Alexa or whoever generation to the, I learned long division this way. And I sort of, I see, both worlds, and I can see the value in, well, that certain things we should memorize and know. And then certain things it's like utilize your technology kind of thing. But I feel like that process of learning it, even if you're going to ask technology for help, like just even have been through that, allows you to absorb anything better, right? And just like what you just shared, I guess is it called etymology, where like you have an understanding of what the word is meaning, how it's broken down. It does store longer term for you to share. Like this means that you're recording something into your heart. It makes it much more memorable, and enjoyable also to learn, right? Rather than just be fed the answers, because then that doesn't really allow you, like you said, to learn. It just gives you the answers. I
Well,
don't know if
let's look at this. So when I did this project of writing the entire, I did for those who might be coming late. So my favorite book of all time is The Sword and the Stone. So I said, I'm going to read it and just make commentaries on it. So to do it, I had to retype. I retyped this entire book.
yes, you did.
And then as I was retyping it, something would, and sometimes it was like, so you can tell when I didn't really find something very as good as other parts because it'll be much longer sections.
Yeah.
The longer I wrote, the less interested I found it. Uh, and then I would look up the words, I would make comments, and I ended up, I can't remember if it's 250,000 or 1/8 of a million, but either way, it's a lot of words.
It's a
This,
lot of words.
this document that is a labor of love, but compare that to this new thing that's come out recently called chat bots, which I
Mhm.
guess one of my friends who was in my group. So I started a course at Columbia College called Religion and Human Experience. And frankly, I had to get out of it because the amount of cheating that goes on in college. And he said, you thought cheating was bad then? With chat bots, they just talk into the thing and it prints out an answer. And very often it's in gobbledygook or gibberish, depending on which side of the continent of gibberish you're on. And students aren't even attempting to cut and paste anymore.
Yes.
Now they're just, and here's the thing. I've said this sometimes, and I don't like it. You pretend to learn, I'll pretend to teach. And the second I said that out loud to myself, I got out of teaching the next day.
Mm.
Learning. So here's let me make sure they're clear. In the same way, I think that you have to have intensive weight training followed by long walks. I think you need to do rote memory, which is hard work, and the comma counts in rote memory, the exact language counts, and then long conversations, dialogue, thinking, absorbing. The great conversation, as I think it was Mortimer Adler called it, is that you memorize this thing, maybe one sentence from every chapter, and then you bounce that sentence off, and we all have 20 different sentences we memorize. Then we bounce this idea across, and then pretty soon, this isn't just a book, but it's a treatise on how to become a better teacher. It's a treatise on how to become a better thrower. This same book, The Sword and the Stone, that I use as a teacher to improve my teaching, I use as a discus thrower to improve my throwing, and as an Olympic lifter to improve my lifting. When you get to the chapter on how he pulled the sword out of the stone, it is a mini study on how to deadlift.
Oh, we'll
When you
definitely be
read it,
getting there. Yeah, we'll be definitely getting there.
it's how to deadlift. Never let go.
Never let
Don't have a
go.
stalling. Don't have a stalling effort. Yeah.
It's
Cohere,
fantastic.
stick together. Yeah.
Well, yeah, so the Chat GPT thing is really fascinating to me because I had, my student who's very tech, kind of is like, all right, I immediately asked, who is Sifu Mimi Chan? And it came up with a ton of things. Some of them correct, some of them not so correct. Because all it does is really scours for information that's already out there, which some of it's correct, some of it's not correct. And so I feel like we're a long way off from relying or should or being
How do you
feeling like
use it? I
that's a
didn't know.
reliable source.
How do you use it? I didn't know you could
So
just
I've
use it.
never used it, but apparently it's like an open AI model. And so you can ask it to, like, I was listening to one of these podcasts that I think it was actually the Daily or something. It was like, oh, Chat GPT, tell me a story in Shakespearean language about me going to the store. And then it'll literally come up with a story about that. And they'll say like, hey, 1930s mobster style language. And it will actually come up with something. But it also can pull information. So if I said, who is Coach Dan John, it'll probably come up with, oh, he is a prolific author of da 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 da. Probably will say he loves Sword in the Stone and all these things. And it'll also probably pull maybe another Dan John, like it may, it basically will pull a bunch of things
The
together. And so
Italian clothing. Yeah. Yeah.
so some things are going to be on and off. It's fascinating. But what I think is for humans like yourself and even myself, it's more of a confirmation that we are needed more than ever now, right? So like strength training and teaching and things that are like what we do with movement and breathing and things that require spirit and purpose intent, right? Like the silence aren't coming quite yet. I'm sure that it's inevitable. I've been talking about this actually for the last few episodes, because also there's the AI imagery, right? Where you can put a photo in and then it'll come up with an image in the style of, Picasso, in the style of Leonardo or something. And it can do these kind of crazy things. So
Okay, that's just amazing. Um, you know, one of the things I kind of would like to make sure the readers know, we're on chapter 10, but we are in truly a mini story. Now, I've always thought that if you could only take one chapter, it'd be the story of being with the Merlins, out being with the Hawks, okay?
Mhm.
Because that chapter sits alone by itself. But this is one of the more unusual chapters because sections, because in 9, as we discussed last time, it seems like a million years ago, uh, it's the whole idea that Wart and Kay get into a fight. Uh, Wart, even though got a black eye, still wants to help out. And then, of course, there's that whole thing. Merlin can't find his hat, and he yells, and all he wants is a damn nap. Okay,
Yeah,
and
lots of
off
naps.
on in other words, get the hell, do whatever you want, get out. I'm going to take a nap, and then I'm going to take another nap, and then I'm going to take another nap. And in this chapter, we go down a road, we meet we meet a few people. There's a meal, and then there's a discussion about what we're facing. In my book, it's 130, and you find out that not only do the bad guys have a whole bunch of Robin's people, and they've been assassinating Robin's people for a long time, but Dog Boy and Watts are also still there.
Mm.
Now, what's good about that is that long term, um, you know, they obviously they're going to save both of them, but it's all we go from a merry little adventure to literally life and death in
Yeah.
just one chapter. So it's like, yay, we're going on a chapter, and of course, uh, um, you know, the anthropomagi or whatever they're called are going to eat Dog Boy Watt and uh, uh, Robin's men at the feast coming up. So they're heading in to stop cannibalization of their own people.
Mhm. Right.
And it's for some reason, eating other people is like I hate to call it the last taboo because there's many taboos, but eating other people just seems to touch a button for many people, for many humans.
Mhm.
That is like the unforgivable part.
Yes, yes.
So I didn't see it, but the Jeffrey Dahmer show was on, and somebody
Yeah, I
said it
didn't
was
either.
politically incorrect, and I'm like, "Shut up! The guy was a cannibal." You know, and it's funny because that was my reaction when I first heard about the whole stories.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care about no political correctness. And again, if you wish, uh, gentle listeners, send your comments to Mimi. Dan John is anti-cannibal. Okay, I am. I admit it. Soylent Green is people. I don't like that.
No, we did talk about cannibalism last time too, because it was like, here's what's coming. It's that unthinkable word and unthinkable act. And it's not good. Cannibalism, not good. Agreed.
Yeah, yeah,
I am with you.
and it's interesting because one of the things they do in the zombie films, which I hate. I don't like zombie movies or TV shows, but there is that idea of eating humans that just seems to just it's it is just one of those things we humans get. And so here we have, in this nice, and it's probably that 10 is probably probably the fastest chapter in the whole thing to read. There is one other line that's wonderful. Uh, is when Maid Marian asks Arthur, and Arthur's already got his eyes,
Yeah, a little crush.
and she says, "Can you shoot?" Arthur says, Wart says, "Trust me."
Yeah.
It's a great line. Trust me, I got this. And Sir Kay goes, let me try. Such a delight. So there's some funny stuff in the chapter. There's some humor in the chapter, but there's no question about it. This chapter is setting up a very, very confrontational next chapter.
Hmm.
Now there is one issue. There are three radically different versions of this next chapter. Okay, the original has the quasi human, and in this book there's a nice picture. Yeah. Um, so these are the anthropophages. It's those guys.
Mm.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's who we're fighting. In another version,
Looks kind of like Gollum in that.
oh yeah, in another version, it's a very, very extremely heavy woman who basically has the color of lard and white sugar, and she's disgusting. And in the third version, the one that makes the once and future king, basically they're just going in to fight. I mean, there is some enchanted parts to it, but it's very tame. And there's a single griffin that they have to deal with,
Hmm.
and the griffin, of course, gets killed by Kay, and Kay keeps it as a trophy. The head as a
Yes.
trophy.
Yes, yes, that's his trophy.
Yeah. And the versions, the problem I'm having right now, and don't take it wrong, the three versions are swimming in my head a little bit, but it is, in the version we're reading, I would say that the merry men do. Um, it's not. Let's just say it, it's not. There's a word I hate a lot when people talk. It's called fair. Fair. I hate. So I really worry about the word fair. That's not fair. Well, shit, man, life ain't fair. But so they basically jump while they're around, sitting around a fire. They just start free firing into them without any warning, and that's the only reason they can win the battle. And Robin's men slaughter the human like people, and then kill all the other projections. And there's a lot. There's a lot of griffins. There's a lot of. It's a very loud chapter. A lot going on. And in the Once and Future King, it's barely a hiccup, that part of the story. So that is my knock sometimes on abridgments and changing. And I'm going to say this right now. Roald Dahl and somebody else. Now, Nancy Drew's books got rewritten to fit modern audiences,
Hmm.
and now Roald Dahl's books are being rewritten, and I find it fascinating because I don't know if I'm a fan of that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you can help me out. You've helped me in the past on things I don't understand.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you have.
Yeah.
So I'm
Well,
not a. Go ahead.
no, I mean, when you say rewritten for modern audience, you mean like they're changing language or formatting, or
So
because I'm unfamiliar.
little Bobby was a fat little pig of a boy.
Ah, okay. And then
Little
they are.
Bobby, little Bobby was larger than his good friends.
Mhm.
Um,
I'm actually with you on this, which is, and you are the ones. You're the one that always has the quote. Is it Dennison quote, which is not to
Dennis
judge.
with Stanley, don't use the norms of today to judge the people from before.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I actually find being that one of the things I'm kind of fighting for right now is history being taught. Like if we don't know historically what was said, how it was said, and with what intention things were said. I mean, words matter, but I think it's really important to show also evolution as well in terms of like maybe this was accepted at one point or this wasn't and why it's not, or maybe we shouldn't take it so harshly, right? Because in Chinese, actually, this just came up. My friends were here and they speak, they're from Hong Kong, and the word stupid is very loose in Chinese. Like you say, oh, stupid boy all the time. But
Yeah.
when you say it like, you're such a stupid boy. Oh, this guy's so stupid. He's so, I mean, over and over. And we're like, oh my gosh, it sounds so, and it's not even a bad word, but it seems very harsh and direct. But that's very, very much the Chinese language is very literal, right? So I get called fat all the time when I go to Asia or, like, oh, wow, you got fat, and it's not with harsh intention, right? And so that's like a cultural thing to have to understand. And so I feel like if we take
You
books,
explain that to me.
wait, say again, what am I explaining
So
now?
when we used to go get our, pedicures or haircuts in
Yeah.
California, the nice Asian ladies would say, "You're so fat."
Yeah.
Somebody told me it was a compliment. I struggle with that.
Yeah. Okay. So there's two things. One is they really just think anybody that's bigger than them is often fat. Like my dad thinks everyone's fat. He's 109 pounds, and he's like, wow, how could these people be so big? So in his mind, it's just like everyone's fat, even if they're like muscular, if they even look remotely bigger, fat is the word that is used. Secondly, and then my husband Oscar has a hard time believing, like, they love to also say, oh, it's good luck when we say you're fat, like the Buddha, blah, 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 blah. That's why it's a compliment. It means you're prosperous. It means you've eaten well. And I'm like, I don't know. It could also just mean they think you're fat. So I think it's not just a cultural thing. It's who is saying it to you and in with what intention, which is most words, right? Not all words, because there are definitively some words that we all should kind of take and understand. Like there's a universal meaning, right? But
Yeah.
there's definitely context and
Yeah.
I think is everything, and this is why I don't like to communicate by email or text for something that's important. I like to get on the phone. I like to get face to face. I like
Ah,
to have a conversation because my tone helps me. Whereas when I write, I think I can come across very assertive and direct and straight, and people think I'm being very rude, but I just don't want to write like 20 lines when I could just say it in one or two. I think you can appreciate that because you're pretty good on brevity in emails.
yeah. Yeah. Uh, and there's a movie, and I liked it a lot. Everywhere, all the time, all at once, or something like that.
Everything everywhere all at once. Yeah.
It's a fabulous
It's
movie, and
about to win, I think, the Oscars. They just won the SAG Awards last night.
so,
They're lining up.
you
So
know,
it's
but there's a scene in there where the girl explains to her girlfriend, "It's my mother says those things because it means that I love you." And at the end of the movie, she says to the girlfriend, "Cut your hair," and the girlfriend goes, "Oh."
yes. Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
and it's I thought that was a pretty fun little thing. Yeah,
It
um,
there is a lot of quote unquote harshness though in a lot of our culture because it's very direct and it's kind of the harsh teacher thing, right? And so this carries over to martial arts. Like if I don't criticize or tell you what you're doing wrong, then I don't care about you as a student. So if I'm not
um,
even trying to give you anything, that's worse, right? So like or it's just a way of softening us up to make us feel better about our parents constantly criticizing us.
that's pretty good.
It's
Well,
been very generational. Yeah.
yeah, and if anybody wants to, I mean, if they, for example, go in and, you know, make Huckleberry Finn, user friendly, then it's like, okay, well, let's go in and make the Bible user friendly. You know, uh,
I
it's
disagree. I don't think it should. I don't agree
I'm
with
not a
that.
fan of it.
I'm not a
Well,
fan either.
just to bring us back for the listeners, the, the chapter that we have in here is very ugly. It's a very brutal chapter, and our Robin's troops fight a very brutal battle against people who want to eat other humans, and
Mm.
it's funny because when it came out in 1949, the version that was shipped to the States, that was the chapter that they decided to make more palatable for the American audience,
Mhm.
which is fascinating because when the books come out, 1939, I apologize, 1938, 1938 is the British, 39 is the American. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
And of course, you got Hitler in Germany, you know,
Mhm.
I mean, and that's where this book comes from. The Book of Merlin is when White is trying to figure out what's the deal with these communists, these Soviets, and these Nazis. And I guess the reason I want to make sure we bring that up is that I could probably have a movie where you every other scene someone gets their head shot off, mutilated, eyes gouged, and it would probably be okay for teenagers. But if you saw a 65-year-old couple embracing, getting naked, and making love, it would get a hard either that adult rating or NC-17, whatever the rating is,
Mhm.
a hard R, whatever
Yeah.
that's. So, having people gouged and tortured to death, that's fine.
Yeah.
But showing a 70-year-old woman's boob, yeah,
I
excellent.
we talk my husband and I talk about this all the time because he's like, "Oh yeah, when I was younger, it was fine to totally watch RoboCop and Predator, but if there was like a sex scene on, my parents were like, leave the room or you can't watch or anything or any nudity, right? Like just so funny because it's like this is completely okay, but this is not.
Yeah.
But in America, also, I think nudity is which is so strange that like the difference between Europe and the US in terms of like acceptance of nudity and kind of the human form, right?
Oh, it's in fact it when I go to the Scandinavian countries, it is. Well, I was going to say eye opening, but that's probably inappropriate. But there is, yes, a definite change. Yeah, and the
Yeah.
reason I want to make sure we kind of talked about that is that this is the middle of the book, and I often have thought that if you believe in the chiasmic method of writing, that this story is the peak of the book, and then everything else starts to interact. Uh,
Mm.
the beginning interacts with the end, and and things. But when I did that big study, I decided that these chapters were the ceiling, the connecting point of the whole story, because Wart and Wart and Kay go on this adventure kind of as little boys, and Arthur is going to get hurt badly, and Kay is not going to be the same after this. Kay is kind of a hardened warrior now too. He's on the path to being a warrior, and Arthur is injured, and injured badly. He gets better, obviously, and there's more adventures, but it is that moment in the story where all the rules change. And by the way, this is the first story that you'll find. Arthur's not a part of it. Now, when they come back, he predicts it to the second or whatever it is. But there's Arthur. Pardon me. Merlin is not in this story. Pardon me. Merlin is not part
Right.
of this. And so we have a Merlinless chapter because you tend, as a reader, you start to fall in love with the Merlin character. He's fun. He's Gandalf. He's whatever wizards we had in the Game of Thrones. I've forgotten them, but he's the one that hocus pocus and all that other stuff,
Yes.
and all of a sudden, nope, he's gone. And what wins the battle is shooting your arrows and fighting.
Mhm. Yeah,
It's
very medieval. Yeah, it's a very medieval type chapter, like very knights in shining armor and the Robin Hood, right?
yeah,
But you're right. It's kind of weird how grotesque it like suddenly takes this turn from this boy's journey, and then we're
yeah.
in the woods, and suddenly it's like violence and mayhem.
And when we get back, there's one or two stories, and then there's the Christmas stories where it's Tightly or something like that shows up to do the boar hunt, and then Robin shows up for the boar hunt again.
Mhm.
And those are shockingly violent chapters, and so we're also going to, in this version, we have to kill a giant. Well, we have to deal with a giant named Galapus, and it's just kind of there's the stories are kind of brutal after this. Of
Mhm.
course, Madam Mim's story, depending on how you want to read it, can be pretty brutal.
But
She
not as gory, I guess.
Yeah, he does kill her.
Yeah.
Not in
Yeah,
the
but
Disney version,
it's li
but
right, not in the Disney version, right, right. But it's like kinda like beheading a thing is kind of I guess, like, that sticks with you and just like but
beheading, shot by arrows.
yes.
Yeah, it is a. And again, Arthur almost dies again.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think also what's kind of fun in this little piece is obviously Marion and that like what you said where he's like trust me and he kind of goes on but then they kind of go in and to bring us back into the leading up for the perfect deadlift lesson it's like how I love when White describes things as if, well, obviously you would hold, pull back an archer a proper archer pulls back the string with his first two or three fingers and lets the arrow follow it. Like he always writes as if, well, of course, reader, you should know that, here's this fact about this like I would know anything about archery, and so he's like most boys who have not been taught are inclined to catch hold of the knock of the arrow when they draw, and so he's like basically kind of telling them, making fun of how they do it, but also as everybody, he just states things so matter of factly, like everyone should know, like this is how it's done. And also later on, like a page later, if you've ever attempted to lift 100 weight upwards from the ground with all your stature to help you, you will be able to appreciate the steady force which the two greatest English archers were able to exert, not upwards but horizontally. So I know, like from your training perspective, like reading things like this is like, yes, you get like some some joy snacks. It's a new thing that I've learned about joy snacks.
and you remember, a longbowman should only shoot a longbow that when it's not knocked, when it's the string is loose, should be as tall as you are. And Kay, early in the story, tends to overbow. So his bows are too tall for him. And of course, in this story, I think he shoots Maid Marians. I think they use Maid Marians.
Yeah,
As,
I think
well,
Robin says, "Hand over, let them give it a try." I think
yeah,
that's what this
yeah.
part is.
And so early in the story, if it's the story where we meet Merlin, in fact, Kay is shooting poorly because he's using too long of a bow. And it's considered bragging that when you're bow, it's like whenever I see a guy pull up in a big diesel truck, the joke at my gym is the joke is we just say he's compensating. So that's our standard joke at the gym when someone has a big truck. Uh, if you have too big of a bow, it's like you need a big diesel truck or whatever kind of truck you need. It's like you're compensating for small issues in your life that
I love it. Yeah, exactly. But I think this part's a little bit like maybe you said the kind of calm before the storm, kind of softening the madness that's about to happen with a little humor, with the little competition between Little John and Robin, and just kind of like, John's like very strong and is able to kind of just do things like with ease. I think they make it sound like a caress, they say. Like a
yeah.
slight caress.
And you're right. I I'm not sure the next chapter has anything. A chapter 11 in my I'm not sure there's a single funny moment. The Nissites, the yelling, the flesh, the Scipiods, huge. Oh, and in this one, Warts gets hurt by a Scipiod, not a griffin. But yeah, there's that entire next chapter. There's not a single moment that would delight the heart of a little one. In fact, it'd be a scary book to read right before bed in a way, because our hero might be dead. He's fine. Next line, he's fine. So don't worry.
Spoiler, at the end, he pulls a sword from the stone.
It's kind of like in the Harry Potter, the third book, The Prisoner of Azkaban, when you get 2/3 the way through the book and you're like, what? Because a whole bunch of bad things just happened.
Mhm, mhm.
And it's like, and then I don't, is it a spoiler alert to talk about Harry Potter?
No, I think it's fine now.
Well, so let's see.
But if you haven't and you wanna still listen or read, listeners, you can pause here.
Oh gosh, the book goes 2/3 the way through. Sirius Black is in deep trouble. The the griffin, right? It's a griffin. The big, isn't it the flying animal? Is it
The the griffin?
yeah, the one that
No.
Hag, Hagrid's buddy.
Haggard's I thought it was
What is it though?
it's not a dragon, but it's
It's a wing.
a winged thing. His
Yeah,
pet.
a wing. It might be a griffin. Yeah, but
I
whatever.
can't remember the name of it was like a cute little
It's
name
been
too.
it's been put to death and everything. So there's a bunch of deaths that have happened. A bunch of bad people have won, and then of course, bingo, we've got a whole new story on its way. Oh, yeah, Sirius and Harry are about to both die. Yeah, that's 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 where we are. Yeah.
I think though, like, even as viewers, like we kind of know, like, oh, obviously the hero can't die, right? Like you still, if its story is told well, then you still feel that peril and that fear, right? And so, because you're invested in the character, you don't want anything bad to happen to the character.
Well, Alfred Hitchcock in the see you. This is why Psycho doesn't have the impact it used to have. In the opening scene, the star of the show dies.
Yeah, Vivian Lee, right?
Timmy Hedren was the draw. And I never saw it because I was like 3 or 4 when it came out. But I remember people talking about it years later, like, I didn't. That just didn't. And doesn't come back from the dead. There's no metaverse. There's no,
Yeah,
it doesn't,
no
she's
metaphor.
dead. She's dead. And who's a big star right now that people are doing movies about? Um, well, like Harrison Ford died in
Or like
Star Trek.
right,
And
right. Or Tom Cruise dying in Top Gun would have been Maverick would have
yeah,
been
but
kind of
not
shocking.
but in the opening scene.
Oh, right, right, in the opening
Top
scene. Oh, you
Top
mean
Gun
like that it
Maverick.
actually happens? I thought you
Yeah,
meant
and
what
Top
if
Gun
that
Maverick,
happened?
no, I
Yeah,
didn't see the movie, so I don't. Did he
yeah.
die in the movie?
No, no, no. No, I thought you meant like what if one of the biggest characters
Well,
died?
okay, but it's
Well,
gotta be
like
the
Game of
opening.
Thrones kind of did that, right? In the season 1, like
Oh,
Ned
killing the one person we like. Yeah,
yes,
yeah, Ned or
yes,
something
like
like
you had to
that. Yeah.
kill him right away, but yeah, there's I mean, Disney likes to do that with every parent of the lead character right at the beginning of the film. There are big downers that
Exactly.
way.
Mom and dad had to die. That
Yeah.
whole what's the whole theory about the little girls from Let It Snow, Let It Snow,
Oh, yeah, Frozen.
Frozen.
Yes.
Their parents die in a shipwreck, and that's the ship that Little Mermaid has all the that's the one that she hangs out in. There's this big convoluted theme of
Oh, okay,
all those
okay.
shows tying
That's where
together.
she got all the trinkets and
Yeah, yeah, that's yeah. Whether who cares if it's true or not? But it
I
is
don't know.
funny you say that. If yeah, opening scene of Top Gun, you know, Tom Cruise does the whole, you know, um, anyone ever wonder if Tom Cruise has had work? Have you ever seen S.E. Hitton's read the book, The Outsiders? Well, if you look at the movie, he's in there. And
Yeah.
he don't look anything like he looked later. Uh, his face his teeth are completely different, which is fine. But in the opening scene, he gets up on a training mission, you know, touches a mountain, flips in.
Yeah. That
That
would have
is
been
a moment of directorial courage, I tell you.
yes, that would have been something. But
Yeah.
it doesn't happen, I'll say, but I would be very curious. I really loved Maverick. Like loved it. Like it's been a long time since I was so excited at a theater with the
Huh.
right amount of nostalgia and the right amount of fun and just like enjoying like a popcorn film,
That's true.
without being grumpy. I was very very pleased. Like if you like the first Top Gun and you have kind of an affinity for that time and you're like, yeah, and it was moving. There was a
Huh.
lot of moving parts, and it was just like the right amount of nostalgia and like an homage, but not a replica. Um, I gotta say, he makes good films. I mean, it was really good. So I enjoyed that. But yeah, that would have been an alternate ending. And I was gonna say, like this little and I know we have to wrap up now, but this little Robin Hood section also feels a little bit like that choose your own adventure. Like this could be you go into the woods with Robin Hood, or keep going on the adventure and just like cut around it. Like it's kind of like a piece, like you said, a short story within the story where it's a little bit of a choose your own adventure. Like we could have opted,
Okay. It's a good
you
way to
know.
say that.
Yeah.
And, and keep this in mind. Merlin's not afraid to put the boys in harm's way.
No.
And there's a chance they can die. And I'm interested, like I get a lot of parents who say, well, I don't want and I don't, this is an opinion thing. I'm just saying, I don't want my boy playing American football because if he makes it to the NFL, he'll have concussions. Well, that's a big if, mom. But uh, so you're going to find a sport that has less head contact. I'm okay with that. But if you keep taking, the danger away from everything,
Yeah.
I don't know about little girls, but little boys will find far more dangerous ways to do things than the organized practice field. I'll say
I
that.
definitely think that can be said for humans. And it's just human nature. Also, when you tell someone no, they're more likely to really want to do it. It's like that whole restrictive thing. Um, there's a age limit for alcohol here, whereas in the islands, where my mom is Jamaican, and like it's not a big deal. There's probably less drunk drivers, there's probably less, it's just a restrictive thing, right? And obviously there's certain things that are very bad for humans.
I live in Utah.
That's
Trust me. Yeah, Look up why crabs is exploding in armpits in Utah, and then get back to me if this is a real thing, because it is. Crabs in armpits. Because if you strict things, people find a way around it.
Yeah, but of course within reason, right? Like we do want to keep our kids safe, but I feel like
Yeah.
you as a coach, I'm sure get a lot of it where parents think that they have to just isolate them. And I'm like, well, then just keep them home at this point. Like, why bother even bring them out on the field or bring them out into society? Like, you have to let them get dirty and get immunity and get, it's just hard. Yeah, it's hard though. I mean, I'm not an actual biological parent to people, so I can't really speak, but I really feel from an educator standpoint that you got to get out there and get dirty and just, play in the dirt, be outside, wash your hands when it's time to eat, but you know, we can't protect them every moment of the day.
No, you can't, and you shouldn't even try. You shouldn't even try.
Yeah. So
Did we do a good job with this chapter?
it doesn't really matter if we did a quote unquote good job. I think what's good is that we get to converse. So that's good.
Yeah.
I think we did because this chapter really was the comedy. It was also the setup for the adventure, but we talked a little bit about the training sequence and that we got to meet Marion. So
Yeah.
we covered 10. I think we're probably ready to get to 11 next time. So we made it through a chapter, which is pretty good, but I'll kind of look through the notes to make sure. But
Okay.
it's always so lovely to see you. I miss
Okay,
you
so
so much.
Me too. I got to bounce. I've got,
Me too.
all work and no play makes, or whatever it is. Okay. Stay in touch. Okay. And I'm always here for you. All right.
Thank you. That's all for today's episode. Thanks for listening to the Sifu Mimi Chan Show. Please subscribe and rate my podcast on your platform of choice and leave a review. You can become a patron of the show at patreon.com/SifuMimiChan to help keep this podcast going. Follow me and interact on social media at Sifu Mimi Chan on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook.